All right. I'd like to go ahead and bring the Warrenton Board of Alderman meeting for Tuesday, December 4th, 2018 in session. If you would, please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item would be the consent agenda.
We have the regular meeting minutes from November 20th, 2018.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So I'll second.
Motion made by Alderman Costello, seconded by Alderman Schultz. Roll call vote.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Costello,
Yes.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Next will be hearing from the public. If you have anything you'd like to discuss or a topic you'd like to bring up, please come to the podium, state your name, and we'll give you 5 minutes to speak. Not see anybody, we'll move on.
Last time it was packed this week.
Who didn't shower in this group?
Next will be the Board of Alderman comments.
I had one thing I was going to email you, Terry, about. I've had several people ask me about if they can get the lanes repainted where the Schnucks exit is, because that's really 3 lanes with a turn lane, but through all the construction, all that painting has gone away, so it's you have people sitting in the right lane waiting to make left-hand turns. I don't know if we do that or the highway department does it.
It
But
would
if,
be, at this point, it would be MoDOT.
yeah, because and I don't know what the timing would be weather-wise, but clearly you drive by there, all that stuff has just been worn through with the construction. So they've asked if we could look at that anyway.
Okay, we'll take care of it one way or the other.
Okay.
Mayor, I had 2 things, just briefly. I attended the Chamber Board meeting last week, and just a bit of information for both the board and the public. Jan reported on how the License Bureau is operating under the Chamber's management, and it was brought up that the License Bureau will recycle your plates that you take off your vehicle.
Wow, okay.
We're getting new plates, new design plates issued this year, first time probably in 6 or 7 years.
Or better.
So they will accept those and recycle those there. And the other thing that I was very interested in that have people ask me about every so often, and that is recycling of worn out flags. And you can drop your flags off at the License Bureau and they will get them disposed of properly. So
That's actually huge news. So, because we used to drop them off at the American Legion.
correct.
And you can't do that, so thank you for that.
And Terry, if maybe we pass that on and get that in our quarterly newsletter,
Sure.
those 2 items I think would be helpful. And then the last bit of news is actually a Christmas present for us all, and that is I received a email from Wendell Webb this morning, the building committee chair of the Tribute to Veterans Memorial, and the monuments, and I say monuments because there's 6 pieces, are scheduled for delivery and installation on December 27th.
Wow.
So,
That's fantastic.
That is pretty cool.
so hopefully weather will permit, but they're supposed to deliver by flatbed and install them the same day. Maybe it'll take 2 days, I don't know, but so that's good news.
It is really good news. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Next will be the mayor's comments. Kind of thought maybe this wasn't time to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up not only about the mayoral holiday that I'm asking for, but since my comments, I'm going to say I think this year we need to revisit all the holidays we do for that are included with the city. And I know there are a couple that don't coincide with some of the federal holidays, and I would like maybe at a later time for this board to look at that and see if we want to make some changes to maybe coincide a little better with And then we made an adjustment a few years ago, if those on the board remember, to include Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. I noticed there's a couple other ones that maybe we need to look at, so I'd like to revisit that, get a hold of some type of federal holiday list that the federal government observes, and see if we can't coincide it and see if we can match up. So, but I am asking for Christmas Eve to be included in this year. So, if there's any questions towards me on that?
Usually the mayor just declares that, don't you?
Yes.
So, if anybody has any questions on why I'm doing it, you can go and ask it, and I'll answer if I can. Otherwise, I have to still get approval, correct? I thought we did that last year.
Just declare it so.
Well, it is so then.
You didn't know you had
I thought last year we did approval on it. I really could have swore we did, but I guess we
And
didn't.
maybe we did, but it's not required.
Excellent. Well, I'm declaring it. So if there's any angry folks, point in my direction, give them a number.
What is your number?
555.
You're in Illinois.
666. No, I shouldn't say that. That's bad. Next, we'll hear from City Administrator Terry Thorne.
My first item for you this evening is the street vacation and street improvement agreement. This is an agreement with Keevan Family Partnership in dealing with the road that we have called Celia for a very long time, which truly is Pinckney Road. You all dealt with this sometime last year related to the closing of that portion of the road. There were requirements that you wanted to have put in place of the Keevans prior to actually closing that. So we've worked with them, with Lewis and Beatty. Chris has worked with them to put together an agreement that we think covers all of those requirements. First, they will be required to widen the intersection at MM and Pinckney Street on the north. Lewis and Beatty did the drawings for that, and they're in your packet, and Bart is here to answer any specific questions related to the widening of that intersection or anything that's on the drawings that are there. Secondly, that intersection, as best I can describe it, Bart, is it will be sort of similar to Market and Veterans Memorial.
Similar, yeah, because it'll have an island in the middle, basically, to where the right turn will be all separate from the incoming traffic.
Okay. Temporary turnaround at Pinckney Street and Celia. This was the concern that the buses would have no place to turn around until that property would develop, and then there would be an entrance to be able to go back out onto Highway U. So they have agreed to put in a temporary turnaround there that will accommodate buses and emergency vehicles if it's needed. They've agreed to provide the Highway U sidewalk easement that we were seeking so that we're able to have sidewalks along that stretch. Hopefully, again, to prevent people from walking out the roadway. It's a very scary place when you've got people out there. We also have required that the site be cleared within 6 months of the vacating of Pinckney Road. So at least the grading and clearing done to a rough grade level so that the improvements can be visible to what's actually happening with those lots. And that they provide back to the city utility easements for all the existing utilities that are within that roadway area that we will be vacating. They have agreed to all of that. Chris has written an agreement that really spells out all of those details. So we're asking tonight for your approval of this agreement so that we can finally have this put to rest and an agreement to move forward in the future with.
Is there a time frame for the steps? So in other words, I would think you want to do the widening at MM before you shut what we used to call Cecilia. So
Very-
is there an order? I mean, I didn't
Yes,
quickly
very good.
notice it in the,
Very good point, Gary. Prior to the city actually vacating the roadway, the intersection with MM has to be completed. The turnaround has to be completed. and the sidewalk easement has to be granted, all of those things to the satisfaction of the city. It'll really be Guy who will be looking at those to make sure. So once those things are completed, then we will actually take the action to vacate the street. And then I believe it's a 6-month period, once the street is vacated, that they have to do the grading and clearing.
Any other questions? You sure? Okay. Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the street vacation and street improvement agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Miller, seconded by Alderman Deloy. Roll call vote.
Alderman Schultz,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Costello,
Yes.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Miller,
Yes.
Alderman Deloy.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
My next item for you is the right-of-way use agreement with Extenet, and Chris is going to explain that because it has been a process to get it, all of the language to be acceptable to us.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. You have in front of you for approval tonight a right-of-way user agreement. This right-of-way user agreement is in response to Extenet, which is a, basically they're small cell wireless. Has anybody seen any of these on the side of the road? They're very difficult to tell, but the old style was they had the huge towers they built with the multiple antennas, or they had disguised towers that were church crosses or flagpoles or whatever. That has gone somewhat to the wayside with the huge increase in the amount of data usage for cell phones. So what they do now is they do these small cell antennas that give more coverage for data usage and provide more coverage for really the data element of it, not necessarily the cell phone element, because that's pretty consistently covered except for the drop spots, but it's the data element to improve it. So companies like Extenet will go into municipalities in Missouri and really across the U.S. Extenet has done a lot in the city of Boston area, and they'll basically say, we were contacted by AT&T or Verizon, and there's a data point here in the city of Warrenton that there's drop calls, or there's not good service, or very slow service, or very low amounts of bandwidth that's available. And what they'll do is, it's customer driven, it's complaint driven, and then Extenet will contact the city of Warrenton and say, we want to put this small cell site on this small antenna, and they're very small. Basically, they look like antennas, but they're very small. You can barely notice them. They only require electronics or electricity. They don't require data cables or anything like that, but they boost signals for data usage. So in the last legislative session, with the new statutory, we can thank Bart for this, because I'm sure he got a large contribution from a small cell wireless company. But I'm just joking, I don't mean that. But there was an entire new section put in place for small cell wireless. It is, once again, the General Assembly eroding the authority of the city to regulate their own right-of-ways, Bart. But what it really does is it allows these small cell networks to operate within our right-of-way with reasonable rules and reasonable regulations. And so basically, Extenet came to us and said, we want to put one of these small cell towers within the city limits because AT&T or Verizon has had complaints about cell phone droppage or whatnot, or data drags or whatnot. And so they contact us, and Extenet is kind of a third-party contractor. They contact us. According to the new statutory provision, we're required to negotiate some type of good faith, either agreement or have a good faith permitting process with regulations for putting of these small cell wireless in the right-of-ways. We do not have ordinances or some type of, what's the word they used, Terry? It's a permit in place that says these are what you can do. So if you don't have that, you can make them negotiate an agreement. So we negotiated an agreement here that we're very comfortable with. We looked at what a bunch of other cities had previously negotiated, really across the United States, with ExteNet within the confines of our wonderful statutory change. And we have what we think is a good agreement for one small cell tower. Now, as Warrenton grows and there's need for more bandwidth and need for more coverage, I would anticipate we'll get more of these requests and probably even come up with a master agreement that we can just amend from time to time with the approval of the Director of Operations or the City Administrator to add that to it. But it really is customer driven, and it is really based on improving service, cell phone service. And, you know, I think it's a pretty good one. And in the City of Warrenton, ExteNet is only contracted with Ameren to put them on top of the utility poles. So they have to get approval from Ameren, then approval from us before they can do it. So that's kind of the long and short of it. It's way, way more complicated than that, but that's probably the best way I can describe what it does and why we have to do the agreement, because the statute requires us to do that.
Does the statute set the fee, or do you negotiate?
The statute sets the fee. It absolutely does.
Because this is $150, which isn't,
Oh,
it's probably not even Terry's time to write the paperwork out.
Alderman,
And you, I mean, the cost is, the fee is ridiculous.
well, there was a
compared to the
time
cost.
when, I don't want to get into commentary on the work of one of our
Go
presidents.
ahead.
Members, but there was a time when we had these franchises that we could require electrical franchises, and then we can get a tax base off of it and diversify our revenue, but there's caps on the fees now of $150. So that was put in place by the General Assembly with it. But all joking aside, I think part of the reason that the General Assembly did it was because it is a customer-driven demand. They're not just trying to line the streets with these. It's based on gaps in service or whatnot. So if you call AT&T, there's a spot you always drop by your house where a hill is, and you say, hey, there's a dead spot here, and there's no data and there's no phone coverage here, then what they typically do is they contact companies like ExteNet or MoNut. That's the other one that's been doing a lot. And they'll try to get one of these kind of boosters put in place and improve the service. But yes, that is set by statute.
Well, you keep saying a small tower. I don't know, a small tower.
It's like an antenna. I can probably Google one and send it to Melody, and she can pull it up.
So it's probably not going to be noticed because it's on top of a
to
pole.
be honest,
You probably don't look at the top of the pole anyway.
to the east of here, when you drive, they're all over the place, and they're the top of the Ameren poles, and you don't really see them. Now, one of the issues we have with ExteNet is when they want to put up their own pole, which we have to allow them to do, how that is consistent with our, decorative poles and whatnot. But we've basically agreed to punt that, get this initial agreement done, and then work on the next one.
So if this company, do they have exclusive use for Warrenton? In other
No.
words, let's say somebody they're not affiliated with, I don't know who that would be, a phone company, also wants to do this. We
We have
kind of
to
set
allow
the
them to
precedent by allowing this one to do it, so.
We're not, we have to allow them to do it.
The statute.
We
So the
cannot.
statute takes out the
We
market.
it's non-exclusive, which is different than the way it always was before with the franchises. You have to be essentially neutral to, you can't not discriminate against one company or another. But what I've seen, and I don't know if you agree with this part, but what I've seen with what they're actually doing, they're only going where there's complaints, because then they can't sell the service. So they're not gonna line the streets. I don't know if you agree with that part, or.
Yeah, there's gonna be enough need for a while that they're not just gonna put poles up for the heck of it, because the technology's always evolving. Just like you saw cell towers, they didn't just put them up everywhere, they put them up where there was a greater
Well,
demand.
they tried
for need.
to.
Yeah, they tried to. But
Because cell towers were a little bit differently, because they were all, that was when everybody was trying to do subleases and whatnot. But
Well, I remember, Greg, you remember the time, it seemed like every meeting, we had somebody wanting to stick something on the side of a water tower. We were constantly doing that. I mean, that was meeting after meeting, it seemed like.
here's a good example.
We do not have to allow it on our water tower.
No. It's really just, it's within the right of way. This is kind of an example. Now you'll look for it, you can kind of see it's like
Okay.
an additional module.
Just a booster.
That's the same one.
Thank you, Betta.
And say, we have light for us next.
Not very good.
So, do these folks have any expertise in Wi-Fi?
No, but it's not Wi-Fi, but like your 4G and what they say it's all about 5G, but your 4G, you know, your phone not on Wi-Fi should increase data speeds.
Your 4
And
LTE.
what?
Your 4 LTE.
LTE as well should increase the speeds or put plugs in gaps of it.
Well, at some time, maybe in our planning session in January, I'd like to see what the current cost and status of Wi-Fi citywide would be.
There's also some legislation we'd have to consider.
So-
Trying to get their students to kick in.
So one of the major carriers, providers, I would assume for almost everybody in town, or certainly the majority, is Charter. So Charter's starting up a phone system. So,
This is just
No, they've done-
cellular, wireless. It doesn't affect them at all.
Doesn't
but
affect
they're
you.
starting up a cellular wireless
Spectrum is
system.
doing
Yeah.
That's a new
wireless.
product.
They have a
So
phone
how does
system,
that
cell phone.
affect
So-
this?
And Bart, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it, although they're all separate companies, the leases and you basically can lease a network. So you can like, if Verizon has really good coverage in Warrenton, you can basically lease on their network and basically get all their coverage. I don't know, Bart, what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, it's easier. Just a lot easier.
For the record, Bart Corman, state representative for another 30 days. So part of the legislation was to standardize basically these agreements so that there's not as many variables, as well as to make sure that there's non-exclusive contracts. Because as you guys know, in the data world and the cellular phone world, you know, it's pretty competitive. And so they didn't want the fact that, let's say, you know, the mayor was an employee of CenturyLink, didn't want to have Warrenton exclusive to CenturyLink, and AT&T couldn't come in here, and they'd have to pay $800 a pole, and CenturyLink would pay $10 a pole. And so that's kind of the purpose of the legislation at hand. And so it's kind of set to standardize. So Chris didn't have a lot of variables in his agreement, I'm sure, because of the statutory guidance that it was. For the record, I think the proposal started out like at $25 or $50 a pole when the legislation moved from the House to the Senate, and finally got up to that 150 or something.
Yeah, the cities and MML worked really hard. I think it was
Yeah.
Lee Summit, because Lee Summit owns all their light poles. Is it Lee Summit that was the big mover?
Lee Summit, I think,
Was one of them, but Lee Summit owns all their,
one of them,
they have their own
Kansas.
electrical company, so they
Yeah.
own all their light poles, or
and
they have a sub-company, like a sub-government agency that owned it, and so this was a big revenue generator, because they had significant fees.
Yeah.
And so the original fees were very minimal, and then they rose significantly.
Can we assume that this company is paying a fee to Ameren for having?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that fee, was that regulated also?
I think it is too, because if
It's
you
through
guys,
the Public Service Commission.
yeah,
that's
so the
regulated.
PSC sets that, so Ameren can't go too crazy either. But then, like, if you guys own the pole, then it's a higher rate, if I'm not
Yeah, but we
mistaken.
have to let them on our pole.
But you have to.
But
let
we
them
can
on
have
the pole.
some reasonable disguise regulations or coloration regulations or whatnot.
So in theory, if we take over all the streetlights around town, so in theory, they could say, we need one of these on a streetlight because this is a low spot area. So we could, in theory, go on a city pole.
Yeah,
They could, yeah, and it would be.
And then could
higher
we
rate.
charge them a different fee than 150?
Yeah, but it's like $400 or $500. It's not.
yeah, I think,
Per
yeah,
year,
it's
it's
not
not a whole lot.
it's not a significant, it was a significant source of revenue for some cities prior to this. And you don't see AT&T come in, you see MoNut, where you see, you know, these like small companies that are out there hustling to get these things up, and then they lease the space or they rent the space, and there's limitations on co-location, and, I mean, they basically did this to the cell tower ordinances, you know, over the last couple of years as well, but, I mean, I think what's very important to understand about this, it is need-based. They're intention is to have it so it has coverage and 5G eventually coming in.
Any other questions? All right, before we take that, I'm going to say, first of all, thank you for your term and services that are about ready to come to an end. I appreciate it, and I think everybody here appreciates what you've done, except for maybe one person in there. Secondly, the dissertation you got, is that kind of similar? Did the people of the city of Warrenton get a taste of what it's like to be on the floor of the House of Representatives? Because that was a pretty long dissertation.
No, that was very short.
Oh, really?
We
You have hope? Yeah, you can
We-
make
we-
it there
I
someday.
mean, I can go through the history of the agreement.
You could, but I
for
won't
like
allow
18
you.
months, and
No,
we got
I
to it.
really won't allow you at this meeting, but that's okay.
In the House of Representatives, each member is limited to 15 minutes of debate, but there's 163 representatives.
So
So
We
it
should
could go on a
actually-
long time unless a previous question is
I
moved.
believe what I'll take notes and you're hinting around is we should put a limit of Chris to 15 minutes.
Absolutely,
I didn't even
yes.
come close to 15 minutes. It was maybe 6.
Can
It's
he
just a-
yield his 15 minutes to somebody else?
It was a very dry
Just go to
6
yield.
minutes.
No, we could not
You cannot
yield, except for budget debates, we could yield back our time, but other than that.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the mayor signing the Extenet ROW use agreement.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Costello, seconded by Alderman Schultz. Roll call vote.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Costello?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
My next item is the Meridian Services contract change. Recently, we all became aware of the major changes that are happening in the recycling world. We have spent some time discussing the possibility of those changes with Meridian. And based upon the fact that there really is going to be the need, if you're going to recycle, to take a portion of your recycling material to another location. It will no longer be collected curbside. Many things have been eliminated from that, glass and paper being two of the largest. There no longer is an ability to have those things collected curbside, which leaves really aluminum cans, tin cans, and some plastics. Looking at that and the fact that we do have a local recycling center that will continue to take all of the products that we are used to recycling at curbside, the recommendation is to eliminate the curbside recycling and encourage residents to take all of their recycling to the local recycling center. We have provided for you a second addendum to the services contract, which basically discontinues the collection, curbside, and hauling of recyclables effective January 1st. Our feeling was that gives us time to notify residents of the change so that they can be aware that it's coming prior to it happening. There no longer will be the requirement for them to submit reports that were required in the current contract related to recycling and where it's disposed of and those types of things, because none of the recycling will be related to curbside coming from Warrenton. They have agreed to provide an automatic annual extension to the trash contract that we currently are under for an additional 3-year period at the same rates that we currently have in the city. Those would be 1-year automatic renewals as long as neither party would provide the required notice that's currently in the agreement to cancel that agreement. When we first started looking at this, I had mixed emotions about whether we should really just cancel the contract in its entirety and bid out the trash hauling since we weren't going to be dealing with recycling. And it was fortunate for us that the city of Truesdale had just bid out their trash and recycling, and had received bids on that. The lowest bidder for them was at $11.50. Our current trash rate is $9.71. So I now feel strongly that to, at this point, bid it out is probably not a good thing for us financially, because I wouldn't anticipate that our trash bids would be any different, or not much different, than what Truesdale received and dealt with just in the last couple of weeks. So I feel like this is the right time to get this taken care of. There is nothing on the horizon that makes the recycling issue appear to be any better anywhere in the foreseeable future.
Well, if you
Well,
try, I'm sorry.
If you know, to, I guess, address the public, if you've watched the news lately, you've noticed that, I think there was O'Fallon, Wentzville, St. Peter's, they were all facing this same issue of, regardless of what trash hauler they were dealing with, they were going to be getting out of the recycling just because of the what's going, you know, with China not taking as much of the recycling as from the United States, et cetera. So we all knew something, there was going to be some kind of change with it. So my thoughts were that we needed to get, you know, just get out of the recycling part of it. But I agree with Terry that I think it would be, or it would not be a good idea to go ahead and try to bid it out right now, since we've got, you know, these rates already in place, and I think just amending the current agreement is the way to go on it. So,
Well, I was just doing the calculations here. If you take the base year of 2019 and you go up to 2021, Meridian has a 6% increase. If you take the other services using the same base year, they're at an 8% increase over the 2-year period. And if you make those same calculations extending it 5 years, Meridian still shows a lower increase rate than the others that are sitting there on the list. So I think that makes sense also.
I also look at it as a consumer, and someone that does recycle. Kathy and I typically have a full 55-gallon toter of recycle every week and less than a fourth of actual trash. So when I look at that scenario that was put forth, if we continue to recycle those items that Terry mentioned, we'd literally have 2 different recycle bins. So I want to take the one with the cardboard and the other things that they can't pick up curbside now to the recycle center anyway. So to me, it's easier as a consumer to commingle recycle in one container, take it out once a week, and be done with it. So I agree with Alderman Shilharvey's comments and Alderman Knock. I think it's just probably the right time to do this. I'd like to see recycling be going a different direction, but we need to face reality. So,
what was the percentage of, do you have a percentage of people that, of the residents that actually recycled?
pretty high.
Our current recycling customers are 1,131,
Wasn't like
a third.
yes.
A third. So,
You know, and I think it's safe to say too, people are ingenious. They're coming up with new ways to do things. So next year, there may be a new way to do recycling. There's a lot of people that are environmentally conscious now. I think we're just in a roll, and I think we'll see a bounce back where we may be able to re-offer it again, or make an amendment to the contract to be able to offer it again. They may be able to do something different. It's just a lull in the period of time right now.
Yeah.
So. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve to amend our contract with Meridian to eliminate curbside recycling and extend trash service for an additional 3-year period at the current monthly rates.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Schultz, second by Alderman Delloy. Roll call vote.
Alderman Costello.
Yes.
Alderman Ock.
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz.
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
My next item for you this evening is a revision to the CMT engineering contract that was approved at last meeting. We are required to submit that agreement to MoDOT for approval because of the potential for the cost share to make sure that it meets their requirements. And I did so and got comments back from the MoDOT representative. And originally in the agreement that you approved a couple of weeks ago, CMT had included their overhead rates that were lower than the currently approved MoDOT overhead rates. So rather than have to go through the audit division of MoDOT and potentially have the contract bogged down for an unknown period of time, I requested that CMT amend their contract to actually bring those overhead rates up to what the current MoDOT approved rates are. That resulted in an increase in their contract amount of $1,744.25, which is the contract that I am asking for your approval for tonight. That brings the total contract amount to $314,954.67.
Say it again. 300. Sorry. Thank you. Any questions?
To approve.
Okay. There's a motion to approve the revised CMT engineering services contract for North Highway 47 sidewalks in the amount of $314,954.67. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Alderman Costello, seconded by Alderman Miller. Roll call vote.
Alderman Ock.
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz.
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey.
Yes.
Alderman Costello.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
And then a couple of updates or questions for you. Recently I met with the representative from the school, Mr. Klingsmith, and one of the things that we discussed was a joint meeting early next year, per their request, actually. The two dates that he suggested were February 28th or March 28th. I won't ask you sitting at this meeting to figure that out because I know it's ahead, but I will be sending out in the near future an email to you asking for your availability for one of those two dates.
Is this an
I think
evening?
they have some plans for the upcoming year, and they just want to share those with all of you and make sure that everyone understands their purpose and what their plans are for the upcoming year. So if you get a chance and remember those dates, look at your calendar. If not, I will send out an email and ask you for those.
Is this, they're talking about an evening meeting like last time? About a big-
Yes, an evening. Their meetings are in the evening.
February 28th and March 28th.
The other thing is to let you know that the interchange project is wrapping up. We have been trying to get a final inspection scheduled, and I believe that will occur next week. So Guy and Brian Eads, our engineer on that project, and some of the MoDOT representatives, and I'm sure representatives from the construction company, will be out there to do the final inspection. I'm sure there may be a punch list from that, but we're getting very close to actually having that project finalized. Shortly on the heels of that will be the turnover of the roadways that the city's agreed to accept, and in exchange for MoDOT taking over the maintenance of the actual overpass section of that. So believe it or not, that project is coming very close to being finished.
When are they gonna do landscaping around where the curbs are? I mean, I see the center turn spots, they're doing a lot, but there's still weeds around the perimeter of that. Is that part of the landscaping plan, or they just gonna let that sit until, of course, you can't develop on it, so, you know what I mean? So
Are you talking about like where the detention?
No, I'm talking about if you go out to the service road you start doing a circle. You can look to the left and everything, the center's landscape, but on the right, there's a curve and there's weeds, you know, 2 feet higher. So it's like we're landscaping this middle, but the side, we don't care about.
I think they, and I noticed the same thing.
Yeah.
On the south roundabout of the overpass. To the right, if you're doing the roundabout, if you look to the right, the weeds are fairly tall. I suspect that that wasn't a watered area, and that once they saw some vegetation, I think they let it intentionally let it really grow up and probably get some seed on it in an effort to make sure it was healthy. I would suspect that it'll get mowed in the spring.
Right.
Yeah,
If you recall, the maintenance of that area falls upon us. So I think the real answer to the question is, in the future, all of that will be mowed. I don't suspect there will be plantings there, but I think it will be all kept maintained.
Because
and
it's really
mowed.
obvious on the north turnabout, that there's.
South.
Yeah, all of that area is maintenance by the city. So Brad and his crew will be going out and actually maintaining that. But my guess is they don't want to do anything until they're sure that the ground is at least covered with some vegetation to keep it from making ruts and that sort of thing out there from the rain. But it will all be maintained and those weeds will be cut down. They won't be visible.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mayor, could we go back to the meeting with Dr. Flemington?
Sure.
It was either yesterday or today, and I can't really tell you exactly what media, other than it was online, that I read a story that really caught my eye, and that was that there is such a demand for employees right now, and it particularly mentioned the Midwest, didn't mention Missouri, that employers are going to high schools, literally going to high schools to find staffing for jobs that are open. So I think that ties in with the conversation that's been going on with the junior college and the need for some jobs training, maybe even prior to them graduating from high school, some basic training and some trades that perhaps are not happening now because apparently it's a pretty significant challenge right now to get staffing.
I believe that's true. I mean, there are times when we will have positions open and receive very few responses. Now, we've been fortunate that we've been able to fill all the positions that we've had available, but sometimes it's a challenge to get applicants, through the door.
And maybe if it's just nothing more than identifying the students that don't appear to be college bound or don't have that interest and kind of trying to figure out, cause them to stop and think about what they do want to do for the rest of their life, or at least what they think they do. Maybe identifying that and either do some pre-training or some classes while they're still in high school and then funnel them into that trades program.
Yeah,
If I
I'm not
could-
familiar with I haven't seen that, so.
If I could maybe help answer part of that. As you know, that the tech school, along with our support from St. Charles Community College, they are really, this is moving forward faster than I think even a lot of people anticipated. And this is, to answer one of Greg's points, this is one of the things they're looking at. They actually, the community college actually, we have several different committees, if you want to call them that are looking at different things like publicity for when the thing, or I forget what the proper name for it is, but any of it, they have a actual group that is looking into that kind of stuff, that they can work with the high schools in both Warrenton and Wright City and address these issues that, yes, we want to identify these students that maybe not go to college and be able to guide, have a place for them and guide them to more tech, whether it be computers or welding or, you know, all different kinds of things. So I know, I think they've got another meeting coming up. I don't know if it'll be before Christmas or not, but we'll get should get a pretty good update here coming up. But that's, you're right about that, Greg. They're looking at that. I know the high schools, Dr. Klingensmith is very, I think, impressed with the way the community college is going after this. Dr. Buck also from Wright City. So those are just exactly the kind of things that are being addressed with this. So.
Well, Mike, maybe you know the answer to this. So in the GWCDC newsletter in November, it said that St. Charles Community College is proposing to construct an additional 25,000 square foot training center that includes classrooms, labs, training space. Well, my first question was where? And then it said that we need to be supported by a tax levy from the residents of the R2, R3 school districts that may come in April to be approved. So have they indicated where this center might be located or what they're thinking about?
No, they had, not to my knowledge, there's been no addressing the location, everything. Right now, they've been to Jeff City to try to, they want to talk to, as you know, Governor Parson, one of his thing is job creation and also finding workforce creation is what he calls it, Bart, isn't it?
Workforce development.
Workforce development, yeah. So they wanted to meet with him. I think they met with a couple legislators instead. Basically, it just laid the groundwork. There's some grant money out there to get them started with it. So I think it's a little premature yet, you know, to say, yeah, that it's, they want to try to get it on the April.
Well, I mean, that's just reading from
Yeah, that's from,
their
yeah,
newsletter.
from the Economic Development
Right.
Group.
Because the other thought I have, if the taxpayers in the R2, R3 school district are going to support to build this, it needs to be in the R2, R3 school district area somehow, as opposed to an extension to their campus in St. Charles or St. Peter's.
No, it will be out in this area.
Somewhere,
It
okay.
will be somewhere west of Forest, that was the best I can tell you. I don't know. Like I said, that's,
Okay.
now one of the things they have been working toward is to find a temporary location where they could start some of these technical training already. I don't know how far they are along with that either. That's another. Like I said, you can talk to Steve Etcher and some of those involved, and it's moving forward a lot faster than I think anybody anticipated. So, hope that answers some of your questions, Greg.
Any questions or comments?
I find
I don't
that
have anything else.
news story, I'll forward it to Terry.
I'm sorry, Terry, did you say?
I don't have anything else, thank you.
Excellent. Next, we'll hear from the Finance Officer, Dana Belaska.
Good evening, Board and Mayor. Before you is presented a list of claims for payment totaling $404,623.46. So if there are no questions regarding the items on the list, I'm just asking for your approval to pay those.
Yeah, I did have a couple questions.
Certainly.
You know, since we were guessing at the cost of operating the pool, I see that this is marked a December management fee 31,000. Does that look like, or almost 32, does that look like what it's been coming in consistently? So when we do the budget, we can get our hands around that number? Or is this what's considered the typical month, or would you know that?
Are you talking about the Midwest Pool Management fee?
Yes, right.
We know from the contract exactly what that
Okay.
amount's going to be for every month.
Okay, so that's
It's all
a
laid
fixed.
out. It's a fixed fee.
It's a fixed fees, so it doesn't vary based on the amount of time they're open, based on the staffing considerations at all.
Not
It's
at
just
all.
a
The
fixed
only
fee.
part of that that would change is there is a projected number of hours for the actual guards that are included.
Right.
At the end of the contract period, if in fact the number of hours expended for the guards is less, then they would refund a credit.
Okay,
They assumed that guard hours would be the maximum number, since we didn't have any operating
right.
experience. So there could be a credit at the end. We have asked them to keep the aquatics open, because we don't know at this point what residents are gonna want when they're
Right.
going to be there. So I can tell you there are times that you can go over there and there are guards, but there's nobody in the water. But we've asked them to do that because we need to get a feel for what are the times that we need to have the aquatic center open versus when there's no need for it, and perhaps we close it down. But I think we're gonna have months of operating experience to really be able to predict that.
Could you give me an idea how sales are going there?
I honestly
Okay.
can't. I can get you that
Yeah.
compared to what our projections were, but I do not know off the top
Okay,
of my head.
because I was thinking if things are slow, would it make sense from a marketing perspective to maybe give a few more free days, since we're paying for the guards service anyway, to see if we can continue to stimulate some interest so there's more on people's, and maybe that's something we need to look at, moving forward.
Yeah, we are doing some specials, if you will,
Okay,
so that, for example, on days when school is out, those are our busiest days.
right.
So things to try to draw customers in to get them there to see the facility. We have a whole plan for marketing for next year, but we actually are waiting for next year's school schedule to be put together, because we're gonna try to center around some of those. So we're working on a marketing plan and offering some of those days either at significantly reduced rates or a special 3-day pass or those kinds of things. But it's trial and error to see what really
Sure.
works and what doesn't.
Sure.
And we knew that. And
Well,
we knew
no,
that-
it was a total guess.
Right,
That's what boils down
right.
to.
Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the accounts payable in the amount of $404,622.46.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Deloy, seconded by Alderman Shell Harvey. Roll call vote.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz?
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Costello?
Abstain?
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one abstention.
At home, when I pay bills on the computer, if you put a dollar amount in that's larger than what you expect, it says, are you sure you want to pay this? Well, this one's so much smaller than we normally pay. I was wondering if our system says, are you sure you're not missing a few bills? Because we've been paying every time millions of dollars, and with each payment, and all of a sudden now we're down to below $500,000, and it's just like, whoa, what happened there?
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that today. I was actually putting my thoughts together for the article for Adam for the paper for next year. And Brady and I were talking about all the projects that we have going on. And so we've got this major sidewalk project on North 47. We've got a major sidewalk project downtown. But we were sitting there and it's like, okay, well, this doesn't seem like what we've done for the last 3 years have been these huge interchange and the new pool park. And so I was sort of struggling for what else do I need to write about, because it just doesn't seem overwhelming as it did for the last couple of years. But
So you need to write,
thankfully, those big ones are winding down.
so you need to write, and here's where we take a breath.
Yeah, a deep breath.
And that's welcomed, actually. We can play catch up with some other things. But
Kinda nice
it's
to
really
breathe.
funny to think about what we've had for the last 2 or 3 years and what we have moving forward.
No, I think the public joins your sentiment. They want to know what's next, what's next, what's next.
Sure.
They don't understand when I know, as a mayor, I tell them, sometimes it's just nice to take a breath. Let us take a breath. You get bite back, but I'll tell you, it's the truth. Everyone needs it. Everyone needs to take a breath for a minute. We'll hit back at it, but the breath is nice. The pause is good.
And one thing I learned today, the expectations based on what we've done over the last 3 years have certainly become paramount and grown exponentially.
It's not the most favored thought, but sometimes you just have to speak.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Dana. Go ahead.
Okay, on the financials then, you have before you the October financial report. General fund revenues are about 105,000 over budget, higher than budget. There is a line item for pool in there that is 19,000 below budget on pool revenue. Again, that is both pool operations, the old pool over the summer and the new one to date combined. Sales tax is running about 3% higher than budget. Franchise fees about 2%. Police fines are running about 49,000 above budget. In general fund operating expenses, they are running about 297,000 below budget, and about 181,000 of that is related to salaries and personnel related expenses. So again, we've had some periodic vacancies. So the other balance, the remaining balance, is just related to supplies, maintenance, and some capital. It's just a timing issue. We just haven't spent all those funds yet. In the water and sewer fund, revenues are about 86,000 above budget, more in the industrial sewer side, coke plant activity. Operating expenses, 103,000 below budget. Again, one of their key areas is personnel-related cost vacancies. And there are some major water sewer-related capital projects that haven't started just yet. In the capital sales tax fund, interest revenues about 10,000 above budget. Spending year to date is happening a little faster than we originally had budgeted. But like we said before, as of October, it still looks like we're going to be within budget on the balance of the pool park project.
And again, I think the important thing there to look at is what you added below is the projection as of June 30th, so it's still projected to be a positive number in that fund. That's
correct.
I think that's the critical piece.
Okay. Were there any other questions on the financials?
I don't believe
Okay.
so. Thank you.
That's it.
Next, we'll hear from the Chief of Police, Larry Eller.
Mayor and Board, I just have 3 items for you tonight. They're all policies for your approval. The first is motorist assist, which is pretty self-explanatory. This satisfies the clear requirement. Confidential informants, the same thing. Very detailed description on how we handle confidential informants and establishes forms that we would use and money to be used for such purposes. The command protocol is a revision. I think you originally approved this in June, and I'm requesting a revision to add the position of accreditation manager to the command organizational structure.
So how far along in this process do you think you guys are?
Let's say we're, with the policy part,
Well, I guess with policy and then everything in terms of,
I'd say we're right on track.
Okay.
And I discussed this with Terry last week that beginning of next year, I plan on having a meeting or bringing to the meeting my accreditation manager and all the work that we've done so far to show the board and the public where we're at with that process. It's quite significant. So we've got another 12 or 15 policies ready to go through our committee, which will be coming up for your approval again pretty soon, and there's 4 more in the works now. So I'd say we're right on track.
so after the policies are all done, what's the next step?
The next step would be to have a remote kind of, well, first we would have another agency who's CALIA accredited come in and do kind of a mock audit of our stuff to point out any deficiencies because they've already been through it. After that, all of our files will be remotely accessed by Kalia for them to do a remote audit. Then after that is the on-site audit. So we're still in the very first self-assessment phase, which is the very beginning of it.
So to further Alderman Ock's inquiry, in terms of time, do you think you're looking by year-end 2019, by the time that final internal audit would be done?
I think it's
implemented, or
2021, correct?
It was 3 years.
It's 3 years from the start.
So we're a long way out.
Oh, yes.
We're still, yes, but we are right on track.
Making good
And I
progress.
think understanding, if you will, Larry, explain as you did to me that as each policy is approved, it is also implemented in everything that goes along with that.
So everything that's here in paper that comes before you for approval, most of the time before it's approved, we've already set everything in motion to make it happen in the real world. But after it's signed off by the mayor and then by me, now it's the law. And everything that's on paper has a real world component to it.
So not, when they come in, not only do they audit the policy, they audit the performance behind the policy.
Correct.
So it's
And
a dual
then
thing.
the ongoing thing that keeps us going is called proofs. So everything that we say we're doing in here, we have to have proof that we're doing. Either a document, a photograph, reports, you name it, but that's what gets audited. So it's not as simple as just typing up a report, of a
Right.
policy and saying, here you go. Now we have to put it in motion and then acquire everything that we need. So it's daunting, but we're right there.
Good. Somebody refresh me. I was out with somebody the other day, and I can't remember what community we're in. So their cars all said internationally accredited. So the question was, well, is Warrenton going to be internationally accredited?
Yes.
Okay. So is there a non-international accreditation, or is it just international? That's the only thing.
State accreditation, and then there's international accreditation. And Larry can speak to.
Yeah, Kalia is South America, Canada, Mexico.
What about the cities in the United States? Some of them talk to their accredited.
Oh, I've talked to a ton. Even just locally, there's Chesterfield, St. Louis County, Fallon.
St. Charles County.
So, Chief, that was one of the questions I had. Are there, Warrenton being the size it is, are we like ahead of the curve on that, or are there a lot of cities our size doing this?
No, we're definitely we're out there on the edge.
Okay, that's what I
Leading the
want.
charge.
That's what I want.
That's part of the reason why we got the scholarship, was being such a small, we were competing against Ferguson for the scholarship for CLIA accreditation, and they gave it to us because the size of our agency,
Our location.
the location, and, where we are in Missouri, and the commitment that the city's made to becoming internationally accredited. So we beat out Ferguson for that.
So really, the answer to why is it internationally accredited is because the standards are composed by a larger body than just saying, well, this is state accredited. It's really looking at the best practices from a wider area and incorporating into what we're doing.
You can get state accredited within a year. And that's been fluctuating a little bit, a year to 2 years, but the full CLIA is 3 to 5 years. We've always had the aggressive timeline of getting it done in 3 years.
Any other questions?
Keep up the good work.
We're trying.
Entertain a motion to approve the following motorist assist, command protocol, and confidential informant policies.
So move.
Motion made by Alderman Shell Harvey, seconded by Alderman Costello. Roll call vote.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Costello,
Yes.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
And that's all I have.
Next, we'll hear from City Clerk Melody Root.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. Just letting you know that next Tuesday, December the 11th, begins candidate filing.
Do you have a time on that?
The doors open at 7:45 and will begin at 8 o'clock.
Thank you very much. Entertain a motion to close the regular Board of Alderman meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Made by Alderman Schultz, seconded by Alderman Delloy. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are so adjourned.